Welcome to stream number 55 in this series where I am programming an NES game live on Twitch from scratch, and it is yet another balmy night in New York. I apologize for that in advance, and also for starting late, 2 streams in a row. It's been a struggle with technology as usual, as I mentioned if you caught the pre-recording. So stream number 55, we have over 330 subs, just over, which is pretty exciting. Glad so many people are finding these videos useful and these streams useful. I'm getting comments pretty regularly from people who are watching. You know, never hurts if you have questions or anything to feel free to put that out there on Twitter or on the YouTube video. Another thing you might want to check out is there is a I'll put a link to it in the description of the video. There is a e-magazine that's being created by Lexington Alexander about NES programming and 6502 and stuff like that. And I'll like I said, I'll put a link to it in the description. It's pretty cool. Very neat to see so many people interested in NES homebrew. And then also, if you've been living under a rock or just haven't been paying attention, you may have missed the very successful and still ongoing Kickstarters for Nebs and Debs and Micro Mages. I'll put links to that also in the description. But 2 Kickstarters for NES homebrews that have been doing really well, but they should do even better because they're pretty awesome looking games. People who are active in the community far before I got involved and seem to have have a long running history with NES homebrew. Definitely you should check it out, and if you're interested, back the Kickstarter. But anyway, enough of that. That's not why we're here. We're here to do some programming of our own. So when we last left off, we had rebuilt the NES asset tool finally, after dealing with the changes that I had made. And they're not completely done, but I won't torture you with those right now. But we got ourselves back into the point where the game is running and you can crash into these things. And now we need to start looking at some other pieces of this. So what I think I want to do is, well, not really 100% sure. I think I want to work on maybe placement of the enemy flyby items. I unfortunately, the last couple of streams, I'm sure you've noticed, were a little off the cuff, just because I kind of was dealing with stuff and kind of booted up, sat down, and powered on Twitch to start the stream, because just a lot of life things have been keeping me away from thinking about this. But it'd be nice to get enemies to show up here somehow. Actually, you know what I want to fix, and it'll be good because this will be purely NES related. We talked about last time we had a problem with the fact that you can't move up and down properly anymore. You can move left and right okay, and you get bounded by the screen, but you can't move to the top and the bottom because we had made the change to calculate the ship position based on a world coordinate rather than a local screen coordinate, and that had messed up our bounds checking. That has the potential to confuse the hell out of me and have me spend quite a bit of time trying to unravel why that's broken. At the same time, we may get it done relatively quickly, but let's do that because it's 6502, and I feel like people appreciate the 6502 more than the C programming, but if you let me know, I can prioritize. So let's take a look at that code. So these are the X position moves. I kind of feel like this code is way more complicated than it needs to be, but at the same point, I guess now looking at it, it's really not it's not super complicated. Like we might do better by changing the X velocity to be, I don't know, not even that. Like I was thinking maybe the X velocity might be further simplified or something, but I think we're okay. So this is the part we're interested in. So with the Y velocity, we're loading that in. If there's no Y velocity, then we're just done and we're going to skip any of the calculation. Let's see. So if it's plus, we're going to remove Y velocity, right? We're going to slow the ship down if we're not adding to if we're not applying any impulse to add to the Y velocity. And conversely, if we're in a minus situation with the Y velocity, then we're going to set the carry and subtract the maximum velocity to see if what are we doing here? So we're checking to see, I don't know, what are we doing here? I don't remember. I wrote some comments here about how some of this works, but it's a little sparse now going back into it. And I remember that the sign comparisons was a bit of a pain. So what do we do for the X? So if it's positive, then decrement the velocity. Otherwise, do a negative comparison via subtract. Oh, right. Okay, so this is that whole... Right. So this is that whole convoluted way of doing the sign comparison that you need to use the subtract, and then you do the exclusive OR. So doing the subtract of the maximum velocity, and then doing the branch of BVC. What is that one for? I think that's the V flag. Like I've said before, the problem with the 65... Oh, branch V clear, right. Problem with the 6502 is that if I'm out of it for too long, I forget what some of these things are, especially with the sign stuff. It was so convoluted in the first place that I should probably spend more time kind of learning it a little bit better. And then we do the branch plus, so let's see, in the X I documented it a little bit better. Let's see, but not that much better. So let's see. So we're doing the check here, and then we're storing it. So if it's right, if it was smaller than the maximum negative velocity, then it stores that in the Y velocity, and then skips the velocity cap. Oh, it jumps past the skip velocity cap, which is what we use elsewhere. So then let's see, where is that used? So now okay, right. So now we're taking the XY. Why did I write that? It should be the Y velocity. So we set the carry and then we do the rotate right, and this is because that does the negative division properly, because when we want to when we do the rotate right, we want to carry the 1 from the carry bit onto the end of the byte so that it does the negative division properly. Same thing here, because we were doing it twice, we want to do that, and then we want to clear the carry and add the Y position to the current velocity that we had calculated. We're doing, if you remember, we're doing this division here because the velocity is not actually just the value. It is actually, we're almost using like a fixed point type value where we can do a more slow increment or decrement of the value with our velocity, and then it gets divided so that it affects the Y position more gradually, rather than just using just a 1 or a 2 or 3. So, all right. So then we store that in the Y position, and then we compare it against the, so we compare it against the maximum negative value that we want to support for our negative Y. Let's see, compare. Oh, okay, right. So that's the other thing. So we're doing the add, and then we're storing it, and then we're comparing it against the current position on screen. So that raises the question of, I know we had Y world position. Are we not doing anything with the regular Y position anymore? I wonder if that would fix this problem. Wait a minute. What did that say? Y screen position. So well, that's interesting. Wait a minute. So this is a single byte. This is a word. What is this? This is low level. Oh, that's the camera Y position, which is always in world. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see that it was camera. So that's the entity screen position where we clear it out. That's fine. That's also fine. So really what we want to do, I think the problem right now is that the Y position, the screen position, is no longer being updated properly, which would make sense why then it's not letting us move up and down the way we want to. So now let's take a look at where we are doing the calculation. Because what we're doing is we are taking the Y world position and we are subtracting from it the camera's Y position to determine the entity's position. Oh, it is getting updated. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why is that just getting stored there? That should get stored there. I wonder if that's all that was wrong with it. Because it's updating the position of the entity in the world, but it's not, it wasn't, didn't seem like it was working properly. And I wonder if it's because it was storing it always at the wrong position. Because once it offsets, well, we'll see in a second here. Once it offsets it by the camera, we would have the screen position of the sprite, and then from there, no. All right, so let's do this. Let's open our trusty debugger. source view and store A entities plus entity ypos x. All right, so not that one. This one. So it is, let's see what it's doing. It's loading y position plus 1, y world position 1 for x. It's setting the carry and subtracting the y position 1. Let me think about that for a second. So the camera position is already in where'd mischief go? So let's see. So the screen is like this. This is the world. This is the ship. This is the Y world position for the camera. This is the Y world position for the ship. So we would have a higher Y or greater Y position for the ship than the screen because this is 0. So we're loading the entity's Y world position and then subtracting. Let's see what that looks like. I assume that this is probably the player. Oh, it is definitely the player because we're in the player loop, part of the loop here. So let's see. So we're loading the Y position into A. It's the world. Well, that's the upper part of the world position. We're setting the carry. And we're subtracting the camera's upper part here. And they get 0 because they're essentially going to be kind of traveling in parallel. So we're going to store that in temp2, and then we're going to load the lower part of the world position, which is E4, set the carry and subtract that, and we get 68. We're going to store that in the Y position, which that makes sense. So let's see here, entities. What is X? X is 0. Okay, so let's go to our memory here for a second. So entities is at 93. And so can you do this? I didn't think so. All right, well, can you do that? That's just the address. 80. Oh, that does work. Okay, cool. So I don't know why I get surprised by these things, since messing is really good. All right, so it's first byte, second byte, third byte. So it's index 2. So can I do this? Oh, okay. That just tells us the address. Or does it actually have? It's just telling me. Yeah, that's not working. Okay. Well, that's okay. So entities plus 2. That's E4. Okay, so that's, yeah, so BE4 is the Y world position. I just want to confirm all the things I'm assuming here because, you know, you assume that they're a certain way and then things get messed up and you don't know why because you assumed, and yeah. All right, so 68 was what we stored, so that's good. That is the Y world position converted to screen position. And we can confirm that by looking at the sprite, and the top of the sprite is, let's see, so 68 hex is 104. Great, so that's all lining up. So that's 104. If you look at that sprite, it's 104 on the Y, and that's what 68 hex is. So we're good. We're good there. So it stored it. So now what we need to do is process this. So the question is, oh, wait a minute. Did I remove the code that adds to? No, I did. I didn't. Okay, I thought for some reason I thought for a moment that I might have removed the code that actually updates the Y velocity, and then I was going to be like, well, that's why that doesn't work, but that's not the case. All right, so what is the Y velocity? The Y velocity is byte 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it is 5. So if I just add 5 to that, the velocity is 0. Let's give it a value. Let's make it like 8 or something. Let's see. 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I already loaded A, so let's change the value of A. So oh, was I too late already? I guess so. So let's try this again. So that's the calculation, and then we're going to skip X because we don't have any X set. Oh, did I? Oh, I must have changed the X velocity and not the Y velocity. Okay. So then that would mean this is the Y velocity. So it's going to update. Okay. We'll ignore that for the X velocity stuff because I don't care about that right now, because that seems to be working. So, okay, so good. So now we're going to take the value and we're going to do a division. I think it becomes 2, clear carry, add it to the Y position. Oh, okay. That's the problem. So I'm only adding to the Y position, but I also need to be adding to the Y world position, because while I do want the Y position to be capped by or bounded by the screen, if I don't update the Y world position, then it will only, we're not actually looking at the Y world position for anything other than the calculation for the screen bounding. So it won't matter when we go to render the screen out or anything, because that won't have updated anything. For X, it doesn't matter because the X world position is actually the same as the X screen position, since we're not doing scrolling back and forth. So, okay. That makes sense. The only sort of challenge there is, how do I want to do this? Because, well, let's sort of do the most basic, no. That's not going to work. Clear carry. carry that. And jump carry, branch carry clear to the next one. Otherwise, oops, wrong key. Otherwise, well, let's store this into that, and then if the carry is set, we need to increment the Y world position +1. Because we overflowed the carry and need to handle that. Or we didn't overflow the carry. We reached the 255 and need to increment this guy. And we know that it's not going to increment this one past 255, I don't think, because of the way that things are currently set up. I don't think we're ever going to get this full 16-bit 65,535, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. So let's see how that, well, let's do the other one too. And I know that this isn't 100% right, because if we cap the Y position based on the screen, we're not then bounding the Y world position, so we got to fix that. But I just want to, assuming we don't actually hit the top or the bottom of the screen, let's make sure that this change fixes the problem we're seeing where the ship isn't moving. And then once we got that going correctly, then we can fix the other problem. All right, so oh, wait a minute. These are negative. It's adding a negative to this. I actually don't know if this is... It should be all right. That should be all right. All right, so at least for the case that we're dealing with right now. So we do our shift right, and then we clear the carry, and we do our add here. And then, oh, let's do, do we need to do, we need to do this one first. Because we want the A to have the value of the Y position in it to do this comparison. So that's the right order there. Although, hold on, store A temp, we need to reload. I don't think we're using temp for anything else here. We need to store temp because we need to have this divided value for after we do this calculation. Then we need to reload it and do it for Y position. Once we've got this going, we can see if there's maybe something a little bit more optimal here. Hey Vashtarak. So Scotty, the world position is instead of the position on the 256 by 240 screen, is a position sort of just in a generalized XY plane. So the idea is that the ship is moving in a world that is actually in a world that is bigger than what the screen allows, right? So you've got this larger area that the ship is moving through, which maps to positions on this, and rather than kind of retranslating everything into a position that maps into just what the screen allows, the position of the ship is stored as a 16-bit 16-bit value that maps it on the actual map itself. And then we are converting that into a local coordinate, a local screen coordinate that maps into the 256 by 240 that the screen actually supports. So the idea is that it's easier to look up into this map where collisions occur if we have an actual position in the map. At least that's my thinking. Maybe there's a better way to do it. I'm not 100% sure. But it's similar to if you've done 3D modeling, the idea of a what is, I'm gonna mess up this terminology because it's been a while, but there's model transforms and world transforms, and the model transforms are how the points are transformed around a model, a particular 3D model. Excuse me. And then the world transforms is how the item is actually transformed into the world, in the 3D world where the item, the object lives. And they're two different things because the model transforms represent the points in sort of a local coordinate space of the, whatever your 3D object is, right? And then you have an axis that the 3D object lives in, and you can do transforms that are local to model space for things like rotation before you move it in the actual world that it lives in, right? Where it's got the 3 different vectors that have the X, Y, and Z for the world itself, because certain transformations have to occur in the different what are they called? In the different perspectives or models. So same concept, just makes it easier, I think, from conceptually to model everything for the game, and seems to be able to do it relatively simply, with a little bit of massaging. But anyway, so going back to this, so now we take our velocity and then let's store that into temp, and then load A entities, clear carry. Oh wait, no. That. So we're going to add that, and then branch carry set to clear to this next label. So if we didn't overflow, then that's fine. Otherwise, we increment entity y world position +1 x, and then we should store that. And we're doing that there properly, and then we increment, and then we clear the carry. We got to load temp so that we have that velocity again, and we compare it, and all right. This will either be hilariously broken or it will be mostly fixed. We will see shortly. Oh, well, I crashed. But I couldn't see anything. Okay. Oh! All right, so there's some sort of disconnect. Can I just close that? Yeah. There's some sort of disconnect between the Y movement and the actual Y position. but it's definitely moving a lot more like what I would expect. I just don't want to get too far. Oops. Yeah, so something is not being calculated correctly. Closer. Let's see if we can figure it out based on how the motion affects the crash. Well, that was actually pretty accurate. So is it just moving up that's wrong? Oh, what was that? Yeah, so it seems like moving up is the problem, and moving down works fine. All right, so why is that? So probably because it's negative velocity, so it's right. So let's see. Check B, check A, check release. Where is up? Check left, check up. All right, so it's subtracting from the y velocity. All right, so it is the negative case. So let's take a look at what's broken. Yeah, I agree. It definitely appears to be moving the world position more so than the screen position. That's exactly right. So just got to figure out why that is. So this is the offset here, and then gonna be done. Load a y velocity. I want to put a separator here just to make the delineation a little bit clearer, because code looks very similar. It's like when I first started programming, and I'd have these applications where, you know, you'd have the sort of complex little C description boxes that you'd put in your application like this, you know, where you kind of like actually made some ASCII art there and whatnot. And I remember people teasing me about putting too many comments, which I never thought was a bad thing, but you kind of get conditioned to just move quickly, and if nobody cared if your comments were there, then just kind of I still write comments, but they tend to be pretty sparse and to the point. The problem with something like assembly language is it's not as expressive as it is in other as programming is in other languages, and so in C# and other programming languages, what you write is generally a little bit easier to read, so you can be okay with just something like this generally. But I find with assembly I have to be more verbose, or it's a little, or I forget why I did things that I did. So let's see. So we calculated the new velocity and we stored it. And then we did our clear. Let's see. So if I'm skip negative velocity cap, let's re-examine that. That shouldn't have an effect. So we store the recalculated, or the scaled velocity. We clear our carry, just like we do here. We add the y position, and then we store that back, the Y world position. And then if carry is clear, we don't touch this part. That part's okay, I think. Let's see, because this would just increase this position. But you know, that might actually be a problem because we're adding a negative number to that. What would that do in the case of a 16-bit value? I guess it's possible that it would potentially have a carry set. It would have the carry set, but because the add overflowed it, even though it wouldn't then require an increment of this, it'd actually require a decrement, technically, I think. Right, because if we have trying to think what's the best way to test this idea out. Maybe we'll do the because what I'm thinking is, like, if you have a value like, if your 16-bit value is 0101 and you add -2 to this, it's gonna flip around, and then you want to decrease that because you're actually not carrying, you're borrowing. And the only reason I'm doing the clear, yeah. All right, so that's a well, would that? Let's try this. Let's try this. So, if I load A with 0 and then I say set carry and subtract 2, that's going to give us -2 in A. So that's FE. So now if I load A with FE and then I clear carry and add carry, say 1, I should get FF, which is -1. But is the carry going to be clear? I guess it's going to be set. Right? Carry. Carry's clear. Add 1. Oh, it's not. It's going to be clear. Right. Okay, because I'm not over. So, interesting. So the carry would be set if we went back into positive? Is that what we're saying? So if this were, say, 5, then -2 plus 5 is going to be 3, and the carry is going to be set, and we're going to end up with 3. So if the carry is we know the value is negative, and we're adding it to a positive. So if the carry is set, then we don't have to do anything. Because unless this becomes 0, the carry will be set every time from going from negative over to positive. So realistically, if it stays clear, that's when we have to decrement. Because, yeah. Because then we've crossed that threshold on that. I think that's right. Let's see. That looked close. I just want to. Yeah, that looked good. I didn't see anything that made it look like it had broken. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. Nope. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's. We said we wouldn't do what I just did. We can't hit the boundaries yet because we're not capping that properly with the world position. Let's see. That's interesting. So it might. So, all right, so what we need to do now is we need to make this a little more challenging to fly around and see if we can kind of test the limit here. Should be interesting. Probably need to leave the center clear so we don't crash immediately. This should be interesting. Let's export this. I don't know why it does that. I wonder if that's fixed in any of the later versions. It's so aggravating that the extension doesn't populate itself properly. I mean, I know it's a minor thing, but it is annoying. All right, so let's export that. So that exported. We're into the junk region of the ROM now, loading up as map data. All right, so this is all new stuff here. Let's copy that in. Rebuild. Oops, that's tiled, not messing. Okay, so that didn't break. Let's see now if I have any ability to maneuver without. Okay, cool. That was a deliberate. Oh, that was not deliberate. Okay. And the controls feel pretty good. Oh. Oh. All right. I'd say that that's working pretty successfully. If I deliberately crash into things, it seems to be doing. Oh. You just gotta remember not to. So it's interesting. Moving backwards, it's a little bit of a delay in the crash. It's like it has to catch up with the. Something is a little weird there. I'm not as concerned about that because I don't know that that's as important as what we're doing here with the forward movement, and the wing catching is good, and that's I'm actually pretty happy with that. All right, cool. Actually, that reminds me one thing that I wanted to see. So with the player sprite, okay, so collision points draw properly, and then the bumper. Oh, that is drawing now correctly. Okay, good. before it seemed like, well, it's still not. Something is still a little off about that. I'm not sure what the issue is, but it seems like it's not picking up my clicks anymore. That was working. That's how I set those. That's how I set those collidable tiles before. Something got broken, but okay. We can puzzle through that in a second. That's all good. Now the other problem we have right now is that like I said, we can't go to the boundary of the screen because right now it's forcing. So if we check the value of y against 175, which is the spot where we're doing the split on the screen, if we're greater than 175, it's because, like it says, we've scrolled around the edge, right? We've hit here, and the Y position is now somewhere on the bottom, actually past what's allowed on the screen. And so we're greater than the 175, which means that we've scrolled back, so we need to cap the Y back to 0. The problem with this is that this doesn't impact the Y world position at all. So what we have to do is, oh, actually, you know what? That's super easy because we have this camera position. So we just load the camera position and store that in the Y world position, and that's it. That's the solution to that problem. And then it's the same idea on the other side, except we have to add the height of the playable area. That's actually really easy. Okay. A lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So camera plus camera Y. Okay, so load A, camera plus camera Y position, and then store A camera. No. Entities Y world position X, and then we got to do the +1 also because they're both 16-bit. So that's that. That's exciting. So that would fix the problem for the top of the screen. Load the camera Y position to be the entities new Y world position, since the camera is the is already at the top of the screen. And then we got to do the same thing, but let's test that out. We got to do the same thing for the bottom, but again, that should be, if I don't crash, if we, yeah, that looked right. Other than it's getting clipped at the top because of the emulator. So we've shown this before, but it's worth showing again because it is always a little interesting. Video overscan. So all emulators have some overscan that they simulate like a real CRT. And so basically I have it set to 8 so we don't see the tiles there, but so the position at the top is that, and then that crashed exactly. Oops, hit the mic. That crashed exactly at the right spot, so that's excellent. Perfect. I'll set the overscan back. Just so we have the illusion of beautiful scrolling, even though it's really pretty chunky. I mean, it's cool to see when you're working on it. But it is not as cool to see when you are trying to actually just play the game. So let's see. So now we have to do the same thing here. So load A. And here we're storing the Y position, decrementing that. Let's do that here. So load A, camera, Y pos, store A, entities plus entity, Y position, X. Actually, we need to clear carry, add carry, AF, and right, we load it, we clear, we add, store, and then we do care about if the carry is set. Right, because, right, yeah, so branch carry, carry clear to the next label, which is here. Otherwise, we want to increment entities. This is Y world position, X. So we need to add. In this case, we need to add the 2 for the Y world position plus 1 because of this. I'm trying to think if there's a better way to do this without having to do 2 adds. I don't think there is. Load A, camera. I mean, it's just one more. I keep using Y position instead of Y world position. What do you think about that? Is there a better way than I guess what we could do? I mean, we're not really. I was going to say we could store the extra increment into temp. So we could just add the value. Yeah, you know, let's do that. So load a temp, load a 0, store a temp. Then we increment temp, and then we simply take this and clear carry and add this, and then store that back into. Because the other way we had to determine if we needed to add the Y world position. That was not a good way to do it. This is better because we've just got our temp. We add it and we're done. All right. So let's restart that. Let's see if we are properly. Yes. All right. That's exciting. So I can keep the ship all the way at the bottom here, and it still collides with the world. That collides. That collides. That collides. Okay, good. That is pretty awesome. All right. Cool. Pretty happy with that. Where are we at? We're about just an hour, it looks like. Let's look at the asset tool here for a second and figure out why when I click it's not changing the collision point. Not the collision point, the collidable tiles, that's what I meant. Alright, so that's drawing the alpha blended rectangle onto it. Image. Let's see if it's registering the selection properly or not. So there's the bumper. Toggle the grid on. Click on here. It is not. Why is it not? Metatile selected or sprite selected. So let's see if it even registers anything. It does not. Okay, well, that's no good. Why are we not registering mouse clicks? All right, so if, let's see if we get into here. We're getting into here, so that's good. So let's see if the X is registering as expected. Oh, I've got to get out of the debugger. That usually helps. It's not. Let's see. So let's take a look at our mouse X and Y. So this is this position. It's greater than that. Oh, is it just... Is it just nonsense because I got lazy with my parentheses? I don't think so. I think it would have... Let me just make sure. So let's see. Yeah, okay. So it's not that. It's, is it because the X position, these are all relative. Oh, is it because I changed? Because I changed the way that this is working based on the concept of it being in a context. I guess so. Node width 32. Oh, but okay, but it's a couple of things. Okay. So a while back I had changed the call to image to pass the scale as a parameter rather than embedding it in and having it figure out how to scale it, because it was a little bit more consistent, I thought, with some of the other stuff I was doing. But if you don't take that into account when you are, there we go, checking the width and the height, then obviously it's not going to know that you are clicking on the thing. Hey, alright, that's what I wanted to see. And with the player sprite, if I toggle, oh, I gotta fix that. There's a there is a weird bug where if you click between meta tiles and sprites, it messes up some of the controls. Gotta fix that. We'll fix that in a second. So player sprite, we have our collision points. That's working, so I should be able to, yep, those are adding correctly. Okay, great. So let's fix that problem, and then we'll call it an evening. And I will put together a better plan for Thursday, so that we have a little bit more meat to dig into. Although I'm pretty happy with the way that the code changes went for the movement in the Y position. It was actually not as complicated as I thought it was going to be. So eventually we got to have an actual text control that lets you specify the size of the frames of animation, because right now it's just hard coding it and kind of condensing it down. But let's figure out what the issue is when you click between sprites and meta tiles that are messing up our button selections. And I assume it's just something not getting cleared out, because it's checking if it's meta tile or sprite and then not handling the fact that it's one and not the other, and it was opposite. So let's take a look here. So sprite selected, meta tile, so these are being cleared out. Now it's not calling this every time, so that's okay. But when the switch happens, so I guess it's these kinds of things. That's no. Buffer size, image selected, it's probably in here. Well, that actually works okay. So if you just have an image and you flip back and forth, that is how you can clear it out. So that's not actually problematic. That looks okay. Yeah, it's probably this. So let's see. So if we have a meta tile selected, we click on the sprite, you can see it's got now 2 buttons here instead of just the one, and the view collision points is the sprite button that's getting messed up. Are we getting overlapping button IDs or UI IDs? Is that what the problem is? That's why I don't like this implementation, and we potentially have to fix it. So what I was seeing was animated toggle grid were kind of overlapping. So animated, that's 8003. Okay, and then toggle grid, that's also 8003. Okay, so that's why that's happening, because we're changing the UI type but keeping the same ID. And I guess that 8002 is probably also being reused incorrectly. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. So as I've said, that's why I don't really like the fact that we're even that. So what happened there? So the switching between 2 sprites is confusing the fact that it's animated. I don't like the way that the immediate mode UI is working right now, because you have to specify IDs for for the UI controls, which works fine in and of itself to some extent, but the issue is that if you duplicate the IDs, then it becomes a problem. So let's see, what is oh, am I not? Where is, I know I have a flag for, oh, image changed. So I can pass it a flag that says that even though it's the same ID, because it's the same kind of control, it's changed, so you need to update it, but it was not it was not using that. Let's see here. Is this gonna, so it's not, so switching between sprites is not updating the animated display here. Let's see. Sprite selected, then checked state of current sprite is animated. Oh, okay, so that's not updating the checked state, that's why. And the reason why is that? Okay, yeah, so what I can do is I can pass Again, it's because I'm kind of reusing the controls. So what it should do, I guess, is it should take the checked state that's passed in with the idea that it would be consistently passed in the appropriate state from the caller. Not sure I'm crazy about that. It's kind of asking a lot of the, I mean, it's kind of a non-obvious, it's a non-obvious way for it to work. So you can see that it now works properly and that the animated check gets unchecked. But the reason that I don't like that is because the relying on the caller to pass that to the UI control, well, you know what, that's okay in this case because the control is supposed to be in its own way almost stateless. So the idea is, because it's an immediate mode GUI, it's reflecting the state of content outside, and if it gets checked during the processing of the UI, it's going to return something that updates the state of the sprite itself. Okay, I actually feel a little bit better about that. That's not as bad as I initially thought, because it is consistent. If this were a traditional GUI, like something you'd build using C# or even an HTML GUI where you've got controls that are persistent and they maintain their state, then I would say this is a bad idea, because the control itself would retain its state, and when you went to update the object in memory of the thing that affects the checkbox, when you load it, you'd go through and update all the controls to reflect that change. Here, the checkbox is essentially referencing the state of the object as it's being rendered, as the UI is being rendered, if that makes any sense. Hopefully that's clear. So there's no disconnect between the two. And so that's why that's okay here. I promise I'm not just making that up to make my life easier. But that is looking pretty solid now. I can kind of click around and why is there no collision there? Uh-oh. Now what? Thought I just fixed this. How did I'm confused. How did that... See you later, Scuddy. Thanks for watching the stream. That's strange. So if I click and save, wait a minute, what is this doing? This was literally just working. What gives? Oh, okay, hold on. Is it because I'm passing image changed? Maybe that's why. Let's see if that's what broke it, and then we'll figure out why. Because that was really the only change that I made to that particular piece of it anyway. So here's our bumper, toggle the grid. Yeah, okay. So that is what broke it. That's weird. And now that's working okay. I am gonna go out on a limb and say that the refresh is clobbering some data here. Let's see if image doesn't equal image or refresh. Yeah, okay, so okay. Now the reason that I was doing that was because switching between animated and non-animated wasn't working right, but well, maybe that got fixed by the other change I made with the checkbox. Yeah, it looks like I'm not having that problem anymore. So maybe the refresh isn't needed anymore. And the grid. Oh, wait, it's back. Wait a minute. Why? That is weird. I thought... Is it not that? Is it something else? Is it the timing? That would make me feel a little bit better about it. Oh, wait a minute. What the hell? Oh, jeez. All right. Sorry, that actually didn't even make sense what I had there. So it was already passing the image changed here. Well, that was bizarre. Okay, so it's something else. It's let's see. So if I go to the meta tile right away, toggle the grid, it looks fine. That's working. If I swap back and forth with a sprite, that's fine. If I now swap between two meta tiles and a sprite, how do I, what do I need to do to reproduce this? I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to mess around with that. I don't need to bore you guys with me clicking around like a lunatic in the asset tool here. Okay, so now it's broken. I'll have to mess around with it. Something's not storing the values properly across the swaps between the different pieces of it. And that's why we're getting this weird behavior. It's very odd. Because it sort of works, but seems to be dependent on how I arrive at that item in the list. So, we'll call it for tonight. Another sort of shorter one for me, but like I said, I was a little less prepared tonight for the stream, but for Thursday we'll get some more meat going in the game. As I mentioned last stream, excuse me, I reached out to an artist who I hope will be interested in working with us on getting some art done for the game. We'll see what she says. And have a lot more stuff to do in terms of loading additional world levels in the game and all sorts of other stuff, like trying to optimize our tiles. And so I got to think about what I want to do next. I don't know that I necessarily want to spend a lot of time on optimization yet, because we're still pretty early on, really, in terms of the way the game is being played, and we're not at a point where we are super limited for space yet. So if we don't need to, I don't know that I care about optimizing the tiles too much yet. We can always kind of backtrack and see what we can reuse and compress and flip and stuff, like we talked about with the player sprite, how it's really symmetrical, and we could mirror it so we don't have to have 4 different tiles. We could just have the 2. We will work on that probably another time. As always, though, thank you for watching, and if you have any other questions, you can find me on Twitter at Clairvis. You can add comments to the recording on YouTube. You can find me on Nintendo Age, in the Discord, and as I've mentioned, I've seen a few people who showed up to the streams coming onto that, and that's pretty awesome. It's exciting to me that people are getting involved in the NES homebrew community and asking questions and trying to learn on their own, and with the help of the community and looking at stuff like NES Maker. As I said, I'll put links in the description to those 2 Kickstarter projects, and the other thing, I gotta look back at the beginning at what I said I would put a link to for you guys. And thanks for watching, and see you Thursday, and have a great week, and see you next time.